Like, comment, share, and subscribe. Hit that notification bell in the upper right hand corner. Follow me on all forms of social media. Check me out at thatdrummerguy.com and enjoy the following presentation.
Hey Josh, this is Jean Paul from Clutch.
Hey, how's it going?
Great, man. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much for taking time to do this interview.
Of course.
Oh, awesome. Well, it's great to be able to talk to you about everything going on in the world of Clutch right now. As a longtime fan of the band, discovering you guys with Pure Rock Fury, I mean, it's amazing to be able to talk to you about a brand new album right now, Book of Bad Decisions, which is available for just a little over a month now through you guys' own label. What's it like now to be able to have this brand new album out for just a little over a month now?
Well, it's been great so far. We pretty much hit the road just after the release of the record, and we've been playing these new songs out live. It's been a blast. Some of them we had to relearn because we haven't played them really since January when we were in the studio. So it's been fun getting to know these songs again and playing them live and mixing them up with some of the old stuff. It's been great.
Yeah, and that's just so cool to see that you guys were able to tour pretty much right when the album is coming out, so people are able to pick up the album and they're able to see these brand new songs live.
Right.
Yeah, and
it's been great.
Yeah, and another great thing about that too is one thing I've always appreciated about Clutch is the fact that you guys are able to tour with such diverse different bands. I mean, this run, you guys are able to tour with Sevendust, and I've seen you guys in the past with Mastodon and Orange Goblin and all these other great bands. I mean, what's it like to be able to go out this time with a band like Sevendust this round?
Well, we've known the Sevendust guys for many years now. In fact, about 20 years ago, we were both openers on the Limp Bizkit tour, believe it or not. And we had a great time on that tour. There was a lot of camaraderie between ourselves and Sevendust. I think we kind of both felt like we were sort of the odd band out when it came to playing in front of a Limp Bizkit crowd. But like any other tour that we do, there's always a percentage of the audience who I think kind of latches onto what we do. I think they might, they see something in the band that they didn't really know existed until they get in front of the band and hear the band live. So, we've sort of been able to build a fan base like that. I can remember doing other tours too with bands like Marilyn Manson, Coheed and Cambria, Pantera. These are all bands that didn't sound anything like Clutch, but each one of those tours, I think, kind of built our audience, and because of that, the folks who come to see us play there's a wide variety of music bands out there, and I think they're all appreciative of live music and a band just getting up there and just doing what they do.
Yeah, and that's another reason why I love the band so much is that despite having so many albums now and so many different songs that you're able to choose from in that live setting, I mean, you're never going to hear the same show twice. I mean, even the songs are going to be able to be played a little bit differently every night, and it's so great to see that you guys have that mentality of no matter who you're playing with, no matter what venue you guys are doing, no matter what album that you guys are in support of, you're always thinking about trying to put out the best show possible.
That's right, and that's kind of just been the way we've done stuff for since the very beginning of the band. We've been pretty independent, self-reliant. In the 90s, there were a lot of we were on major labels there. We would bounce around from one label to the other. That was frustrating, but I also think it was very much a learning experience for us, and we realized you can't really depend on anybody to make the band work. It's got to come from the band, and so we still subscribe to that to this day.
Yeah, and that's why it's so great to see that you guys have really taken that DIY mentality and just continuing to push forward with that, because the band knows what the band needs to do to be able to succeed, the right directions that you guys want to be able to go in. So, I mean, whether it's starting up your own label, deciding what tours you're going to be doing, what studios and production you're going to be going with. I mean, you guys have been in the game so long that you know what you're looking for.
Yeah, and we're still learning. There are instances where we make bad decisions, and
I heard you made a book about it.
And it's a process. So each time we're confronted with something that we could have done differently, we remember that and try to learn from that.
So with that, I mean, considering just like a the amazing touring that you guys are currently a part of right now. And I saw just a few hours ago announcing the end of the year run of shows that you guys do every year. And, of course, with this new album, how are you feeling about Clutch in 2018?
How am I feeling about Clutch?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, man, this is the best job in the world. I love being in this band. I love the guys in this band. We're very fortunate to have an incredible crew, a support staff that really helps us make the shows happen in a smooth and comfortable way. It's very enjoyable. This is a great job, and we don't take it for granted. It can be grueling at times, and life on the road can be tedious at times. But at the end of the day, we're out here playing shows, so this is the best job in the world.
Oh, absolutely. So, with that said, I mean, with being able to see you guys as much as I have, I know there's always little things that always change in the sound, whether it's the set list or the way you guys do things. But with this current live show, what kind of setup are you currently using for the drums?
I'm playing a Gretsch USA Custom drum kit. For this tour, I'm going with a slightly smaller bass drum. I'm playing 1424. I usually play 1426, but I've been enjoying the sort of punchier, faster sound that the 24 gives me. I'm playing a 10 by 14 tom-tom, 14 by 16 floor tom, and 16 by 18 floor tom. So I've added a floor tom on this tour. I haven't played two floor toms in many years, but that's been fun too. I've enjoyed having that extra voice down there. And then for cymbals, I'm playing a one-of-a-kind vinyl custom ride cymbal. It's about a medium weight cymbal, but it's 26 inches in diameter, and I've been enjoying playing that. I like bigger cymbals because I feel like you don't need to hit them quite as hard. They sort of speak on their own. You have to learn to play them because it's really easy to get a lot of volume, maybe too much volume out of a big cymbal like that. So it really requires you to play the cymbal. In addition to that, I have a 22-inch sand ride. Both those are to my right. Above my hi-hats, I have a 21-inch crash, which really also serves as a ride too. And tonight I'm playing a pair of 16-inch hi-hats. So the cymbals are quite large. But again, I feel like it requires you to play these cymbals rather than bash them, and for me that works. I try to get a lot of different sounds out of a few cymbals, and bigger cymbals allow me to do that.
Yeah, and that's what I admire so much about your playing. I mean, being able to switch up the setup, be it cymbal setups, be it the drum configuration, whatever the case is. I mean, whether it's adding a new floor tom or getting new custom cymbals or something like that. I mean, I can definitely tell on record and when you're playing a show, like, you really know how to speak to that drum, how to speak to that cymbal, and get the best sounds possible from it.
Well, thank you. It's something that I've worked on for many years, and I think maybe, a lot of that has to do with my appreciation for, the drummers that came before us, and probably one of my very favorite drummers is Elvin Jones, and I had the opportunity to see him play many times in the late 80s and throughout the 90s. And I learned a lot about just the dynamic, watching him play and watching him be able to baby a cymbal, and then turn around and really lay into it in a way that was punctual, dynamic, but also not brash or harsh. And there were a whole generation of players who grew up playing cymbals like that. Philly Joe Jones and Tony Williams and all these great drummers that came before us. And I think part of that mentality also came from the idea that, back in the day, there was no such thing as a ride cymbal or a crash cymbal. They were just cymbals, and you learned to play those cymbals. And I think because of that, those guys were able to develop a technique that allowed them to really get a lot of voices out of that cymbal. And, fortunately, we were able to listen to those recordings and see some of these guys play. And, you gotta learn from all these guys, because these guys will inform how you play your music, whether you're an extreme metal drummer, or if you're a reggae drummer or a funk drummer or whatever. It does you a tremendous amount of good to reach back and just check out some of these guys, because these guys really developed what the drums became. There's an entire vocabulary that these guys were able to develop in a really short amount of time. It's important to at least expose yourself to that and just kind of get to know these things, because it really will inform how you play your music.
So with that in mind, I mean, especially with being able to have your own custom 26-inch cymbal, I mean, what is it from the inspiration of being able to learn from previous drummers, current drummers, future drummers? What are you looking for currently when it comes into cymbal sounds?
Versatility more than anything. I'm looking for a cymbal that will allow me to, let's take for example that 26-inch ride cymbal. There are other 26-inch ride cymbals that are just massive and huge and heavy, and quite honestly can be not so musical. So I'm looking for a ride cymbal that has a nice spread, that has a nice definition, that has a nice bell, a ride cymbal that allows me to sort of crash slightly on the bow and get a nice swell kind of a sound. and I'm also looking for frequencies that are sort of sticking out, or that might be kind of overwhelming, or maybe cover up other parts of the tone that I like. So I'm looking for sort of an even sound, and that goes for all my cymbals.
Oh yeah, and I think that is so important too. I mean, especially when you don't have like so many cymbals a part of your setup. I mean, when you want to have it like a very nice cohesive setup, you want to make sure that every cymbal has a purpose out there, and you're able to get so much different sound and versatility out of it. And that's why I love your setup so much. I mean, it's just like, it's smaller compared to other drummers that are out there, but every single cymbal hit matters because of the tone that's in there, the material that's being used, and how you play it.
Absolutely, and cymbals are so expressive. I think there's also there's a generation of drummers coming up now who maybe are missing a little bit of that in their playing, the idea of playing cymbals dynamically. I can remember being a young man myself and thinking, man, I want to be really loud, because I saw Dale Crover play, and I think Dale Crover at that time was probably the loudest drummer I ever saw in my life. And so the first thing that I did to try to be loud was start beating the crap out of a 20-inch crash ride, and that wore thin. I quickly realized that, if volume is your ultimate goal, if it is, if you're trying to make these drums speak over the band, you really have to start from the bottom up. By that means learn to hit that bass drum. So if you're playing a 24-inch bass drum or a 26-inch bass drum, learn to hit that bass drum in a way that's authoritative, in a way that is punctual, and that's really where the sound starts, and then the next level would be your snare drum, and then after that your tom-toms, and the cymbals are easy. The cymbals are easy to get volume out of. You really need to learn to play those. But if you really want to learn to play with a lot of power, you got to learn to hit that bass drum, man. You got to do it all night long.
Oh, absolutely. And again, that's another thing. It's just I admire so much about your playing is, it's just there are so many drummers out there that they don't focus so much on what they can do with the on the bass drum. I mean, sometimes they just like focus on double bass or something like that. But you're very cohesive with what you do with your bass drum patterns, and you really do prove that there is so much expression that can be done with playing the bass drum rather than just like keeping tempo with it. I mean, it's just like the way that you play, it makes everything else stand out.
Well, thank you. I think a lot of that probably comes from having grown up in the Washington, D.C. area and having been exposed to go-go music. So go-go music is a very specific kind of funk that happens in Washington, D.C. It started in the 70s. Excuse me, I'm getting over this cold here. It's killing me. Oh, man, I'm going on almost 2 weeks of this thing. It's ridiculous.
Oh, I know that pain.
Oh, man. So growing up in the Washington, D.C. area, I was exposed to these go-go rhythms. And this happened even before I was playing drums. This was just me being in junior high, casually getting into music, trying to figure stuff out. And there were these go-go rhythms that would be all around, whether it was me going to a school dance just specifically to hear these go-go records, because there's no way I was going to go to a school dance and dance with girls because I was a dork. So I'd go hear these records, by Brown and Soul Searchers and Experience Unlimited and Junkyard Band. And then there was also a time too where a lot of sort of the up and coming rap artists would sprinkle in go-go sounds, and so I'm thinking specifically of like Salt and Peppa and some other East Coast hip hop rap stuff. The Fresh Prince, he was another one. They kind of took some of these go-go rhythms and made them into popular songs. So these were rhythms that were around that I heard even before I started playing drums, and really that informed, I think, how I heard the drums once I got got a set of drums when I was 16. These go-go rhythms were one of the first things I tried to emulate. That, along with playing along to AC/DC and Black Sabbath, and that kind of really that kind of informed me as to how I would sort of create my sound. And later on, I started paying attention to drummers like John Bonham, who have incredible foot technique. But for me, really, it started with go-go and all these great drummers. There's Ricky Wellman, Brandon Findlay, Juju House, phenomenal drummers with just beautiful bass drum tech.
So with that in mind, I mean, how important is the pedal and like how the pedal is set up when it comes into your playing to be able to get what you want to accomplish with the bass drum?
Well, to be totally honest, I usually get a DW9000 pedal right out of the box, and I don't mess with it. I put it right on the bass drum, and I'll start playing it like that. If I do make any adjustments, it's usually just to loosen the pedal a little bit. I think there's a lot of drummers out there who like to tighten their pedals, and I suppose that works well for them. But I find that just a factory setting, or even just a little less, works for me. I'm also aware of how high the beater is, and I pretty much have the beater maxed out. So in other words, the beater won't go any higher in the shaft, And in this way, I get a full stroke to the bass drum. If you start shortening the amount of beater or the amount of shaft, your strokes become quicker, but then you don't have as much power. So it's kind of a balancing act.
Oh, absolutely. So thinking about that when it comes into the entire kit, I mean, when you decide to be able to switch something up, I mean, be it add or remove another cymbal, add another floor tom, for example, for this current tour, how much of an adjustment period is there for it? I mean, do you feel it natural right away when you add something or remove something, or does it take a little bit of time to get used to?
No, it definitely takes some time to get used to it. I think that's part of the beauty of it. It's really an ongoing process. And even out here on the road, I'll change stuff. Like I mentioned, I was playing a 16-inch hi-hats. I put those up about 2 or 3 gigs ago. Prior to that, I was playing a pair of 14s. And I don't think it's not that one sounds better than the other, or one is more appropriate than the other. There's just different colors you get out of them, and for me that's fun. I try not to play this stuff the same way every night. The band plays a different set list every night, and I change my gear from time to time as well, and that keeps me involved. It makes it so you can kind of discover new things. That pair of hi-hats sounded particularly good when we were playing Sucker for the Witch the other night. I thought, wow, that was a good choice. Who knows? Maybe in a couple nights I'll change cymbals again, and we'll try some different colors. But that's why there are so many cymbals out there. It's nice to be able to change your color palette that you have available to you.
Oh, very much so. And it's great to be in that position as well, where you do have a smaller kit compared to a lot of drummers who feel like they need to have like an excessive amount of toms and cymbals and stuff like that. But you're in that position where it's like you can switch out cymbals, you can add a floor tom, whatever the case is, and still be comfortable with the setup that you have and still make things very appropriate. So it's just like if you do go spur of the moment where you do want to switch out the cymbals or add a drum or something like that, it's actually feasible to be able to do that while you're on the road.
Yeah, absolutely. And bringing these other voices in, these other colors in, only helps to inspire the music in some way or another. Even if it means, I realized halfway through the set that was not the right choice to put that cymbal up. That's going to affect the music, and it's going to make me think about, how I'm playing or how the band is playing.
Oh yeah, and I can imagine that too. I mean, throughout the entire set, where I can imagine for like some songs it just sounds so appropriate and it just feels better than you could ever imagine. But then you switch to a different song and it might feel wrong for whatever reason, but it's just that's the trial and error of being a drummer.
Right, and it's the process, and I think we have to just learn to appreciate the process. You never really arrive, whether you're talking about tone or whether you're talking about tuning or practicing. This is an ongoing thing. It's never as if we're going to arrive at some moment where we say, okay, well, this is the ultimate sound, and I've achieved everything I need to achieve, technically and philosophically. It's an ongoing thing, and to me that's what makes it fun.
And with that, going back into the new album, I mean, how much of an effort was it for you to be able to decide what were going to be the right sounds for your setup when it comes to the new album?
Well, for the setup, for the drum kit on the record was a Gretsch kit as well. This was a Brooklyn series drum kit, which sounds quite different, I think, than the USA Customs. The shell configuration is a little bit different. The hoops that they put on these drums are a little bit lighter weight, so they have a kind of a little bit of a more airy kind of sound to them. And so I try to tune according to that. And then for snare drums, I had a wide variety of snare drums to pick from. So a lot of Gretsch stuff, a lot of vintage Slingerland stuff. I think in total we had probably about 10 snare drums down there.
Oh, wow.
Most of them were mine, and a few of them were Vance's as well. And I think that has a lot to do with how the song comes across. You can really change the personality of a mix depending on what snare drum you use, and more importantly, how that snare drum is tuned.
Yeah, I was just absolutely going to say that as well. You know, it's just like, first of all, it's great that you have that kind of variety to be able to choose your sounds rather than feeling like you have to be stuck with just one snare and just messing with the tuning, messing with the heads, just trying to get that right sound. But being able to have that kind of variety going with it. But I could also imagine you just, does it become cumbersome at all, like being able to decide what sounds that you want to be able to get for that snare sound, or is it easier now, like knowing what you're looking for?
Well, I think it could be a mixed bag. You can look at it one of two ways. You can become overwhelmed by all the different voices you have available to you, and that's definitely happened too. You know, I think to myself, well, geez, I don't even know where to begin. You know, that's one side of it, and then, you know, on the flip side, you know, I think there's some creative things that happen when you just tell yourself that these are the tools I'm going to use in this particular situation, and I'm going to use these tools and make them work for whatever the tune is. So that might require different tuning or different muffling. It's, you know, a different philosophical approach. But I think, you know, if you approach it the right way, each of those can lend itself to satisfactory results.
Oh, absolutely. And yeah, I can definitely say most specifically about this new album is I absolutely love the drum production that's going on there. I mean, every snare sounds like that was the most appropriate snare sound for that particular song. I love the way the cymbal hits are on there. The fills are just so immaculate, the way that you're able to do that. I've always been a gigantic fan of the way that you play fills, and it feels like the drumming on this album is so completely natural for the songs, and I just love hearing that every time that there's a new Clutch album.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. You know, I often spend time trying to figure out exactly what I might play in the studio, and you know, there are other times when I've you know, spent many hours sorting out, you know, what exactly I'm going to play in, you know, these 3.5 bars of a guitar solo, and I've learned that, you know, no matter how much planning you do, at the end of the day, all that stuff just goes out the window, and you just play, you know, you play what comes naturally. So that always makes the process fun too.
Oh yeah, and when you have that mentality going into it, I mean, there's so many different varieties of what could go in there, and of course, again, with being a drummer, there's so much trial and error. Like, if you want to play this fill a little tighter, if you want to play it a little looser, more laid back, more ahead of the tempo. I mean, there's so many different directions that you can go with it.
Absolutely, and with the technology that we have available to us now, you know, I think that can also be a valuable tool. You know, being able to edit takes, I think I think it's a good thing. However, you know, you can also take that to the extreme where you sort of just massacre, you know, a good performance. And so we tried not to do that. We tried to sort of, you know, pick one performance that we were particularly excited about, and if we felt like there were a few things that we could do differently, we might pick and choose from maybe a previous performance. In total, I probably played each song maybe, I don't know, between 3 and 5 takes, and that was pretty much the tune. Once in a while, we'd go back and get little specials, whether it was, you know, a fill that might set up a chorus or something like that. But for the most part, they were just full performances.
So with that in mind, I mean, especially with this new album, like so many tracks on this album, and to me, it's just like it's all killer, no filler at all. I mean, it's just like every song feels so appropriate for this album. With that in mind, I mean, was it a challenge to be able to come up with any of the drum ideas for this album, or the more you listen to the song, did it just feel natural to know what to do?
It became pretty natural towards the end of the writing process. You know, when we first started, I really made it a point to play as neutrally as possible, and by that I mean when these guys would bring ideas to the table, I would really make it a point not to stamp what I thought the rhythm should be on these particular tunes. I made it a point to find out what the tempo was right away, and as soon as I did that, I would usually I'd play to a click and play very neutrally, because I really wanted the rhythm to come from those guys, as far as how the riffs work, vocally, how that would work. And there were even times where in the very beginning of the process, I actually just played with brushes. Even some of the heavier songs, I was just playing brushes because I wanted the rhythm to sort of develop naturally. And then once I had a hold of of how the flow might go or what people's cadence were, then I started to kind of add more ideas in and play a little bit more specifically. But that was something that I had not done on previous records. Just play just super simply, super straight until the song really starts to take shape, and then start to put the specials in. Then start to put a little bit of ornamentation in the sound.
Oh, that is such a cool way to be able to come up with these ideas for the songs. I mean, it's just like in my head right now, I'm just imagining how something like How to Shake Hands would sound on a pair of brushes, and just like hearing that in a live setting. And I just think that'd be such a cool way to be able to write, and then being able to transform that into a full-fledged Clutch song.
Yeah, it was fun. It was something that I hadn't done before, and probably to be honest with you, at that point, I was probably thinking, what the heck am I going to play to some of this stuff? Sometimes these guys bring riffs to the table that are, way out there, and I think, man, what would be the right thing to do? So rather than beat my head against the wall, I just played really straight and let the song develop on its own. And then once we kind of had a shape for the tune, then I started to develop the ideas. And I think How to Shake Hands is a good example of that. There's a lot of different kinds of things that are going on in that tune, and it just kind of happened just very naturally. I didn't go into it thinking, look, I want to try to play this sort of Art Blakey sounding thing. I'm going to play these roles. It just sort of happened after the song took shape.
And a bit of a sidebar with that, but in specifically with How to Shake Hands, easily one of my favorite Clutch music videos. I love what you guys did with that video. I love how the lyrics go along with the song so very well, and how you guys did that. And it's so great to see in 2018 a band caring so much about how a music video is going to come out.
Well, thank you. We had a great time doing that video. We actually were able to do that video and Hot Bottom Feeder all in one day, believe it or not.
Oh wow!
Yeah, it was cool because we had a green screen there, and we set up in this house, and our buddy Dave Brodsky, who directed those videos, came down to Maryland, and it was actually a really fun afternoon. So we did the How to Shake Hands stuff first, and then we switched gears and did Hot Bottom Feeder, which was for myself and Tim and Dan was super easy because it just meant we sat around and watched Neil make crab cakes, and we drank beer while he did that, and then in the video, as you can see at the end of the video, after he makes the crab cakes, he served them to us, and that was a real thing. They were delicious, and by that time we'd all had a couple beers in us, and it was a really fun day, and we're proud of both of those. They really came out great.
Oh, absolutely. I love both videos, and it's so cool to see that you guys were able to do that in one day, and just constantly having fun with each other in a band this long, because it's just like there's bands that have been around for incredibly shorter amount of times that can't stand each other after a couple albums in, but it's so great to see that you guys are just having this much fun still in 2018.
It is. I think it's I have a better time out here now than I did 20 years ago, and I'd be really having a good time if I could just kick this stupid cold already. I'd be having a blast. But I think we appreciate it more. I have a better time playing. For me, it comes more naturally. We have many songs to choose from. Every night's a little different. And like I said, we have such a great crew. Many of these guys have been with us for years and years, and so there's really a lot of camaraderie out here, and I think more than anything, respect for one another, knowing how to give people space, knowing that it's okay not to say anything. I think some people have a problem. If several folks are hanging out in a room, and if people aren't saying anything, they think, well, something's wrong, and that's not the case. It's okay just to sit there quietly and just enjoy the moment. I think we're all kind of aware of that, and that only comes with just taking the time and being out here.
Yeah, and again, it's so great to see the continuous rise that continues on with the band. It's just like, again, with so many albums, so many great tour opportunities, and I can easily tell that the creative inspiration, it's just continues to flourish with every album, and not every band is able to get that. So it's just like when you are able to find that right group of musicians to be able to continue to write music with, being able to tour with, and actually treat them like a real family, in the studio, on the road, or whatever the case is, or outside of band life, just like it's great to be able to have that and to cherish that moments. Yeah,
it's a very special thing, and I think we're all very aware of it, and do not take it for granted.
So also with that in mind, I mean, of course, you guys are in the midst of this great tour throughout America right now, and a couple hours ago, like I mentioned before, it was announced for like the end of the year shows that are coming up. I mean, what's it like for you guys to be able to like close out the year every year, being able to do these short but sweet shows?
That run in particular, the holiday run, let's call it, has really grown into this. It's an annual event, and we play for the most part the same venues more or less. We always play on New Year's, and it's fun in a lot of ways. I think it's great because people are usually home for the holidays, and so a lot of folks who maybe were out of town, come home to see family, and they sort of get together with their friends and go see the Clutch show, and that's a great thing. So that the shows themselves really have a celebratory kind of vibe, and we make it a point too to make those bills as diverse as we can. For this year, for example, we have aesthetics on the bill. We're super excited about that. This is essentially the rhythm section from Fugazi, Brendan Canty and Joe Lally. Super excited to have those guys on the bill. When I was a young man, Brendan Canty was a drummer that I very much looked up to, still do. We were huge Fugazi fans, and so to have those guys on the bill is awesome. Lion Eyes is a band that's from Maryland that we've known for many years, who I actually met when I was taking lessons with my drum teacher, Walter Saab. And these were, at the time, they were just high school kids hanging out over at Walter's house. And Walter was quite a character, and he could be he was tough, and he could be verbally abusive, but it was all in good fun. And I often wondered, why are these kids hanging out over here at Walter's house? I have to come over here because I got to do drum lessons, but these kids are just coming over here to hang out. They were just musician kids, and that's how I initially met them. And man, that was almost 20 years ago. And so we've worked together in many capacities. Just over the summer, I actually recorded an album with them, and I'm very excited about that. I'm super excited about the playing. Those guys really came to the table with some great tunes. So that was awesome, and that record should be coming out early next year. And we've also got Mike Dillon on the bill too, and Mike Dillon is a tremendously talented percussionist drummer from New Orleans, and I've done some projects with him. I've done some gigs with him, and he's played with us on several occasions. He's on Book of Bad Decisions on a few songs, and he was on Psychic Warfare as well. So I'm sure that we'll get him up on stage and we'll jam some with him as well. It'll be good. It's kind of it's a party vibe, and we're excited about that.
Oh, absolutely. And it does kind of have that family kind of feel to it. I mean, through all sides. I mean, not just the shows, but just this lineup in particular. Like being able to. Like you said, you're playing drums with Lion Eyes, and of course Mike Dillon being able to play on the past couple Clutch albums. I mean, it's great to be able to see for a short run like that, being able to get together like that and just celebrate some great music.
That's what it's all about.
So with that in mind, I mean, being able to record for the new Lion Eyes album, I mean, what was that like for you? I mean, of course, with having the new Clutch album in mind, what was it like to also be thinking about Lion Eyes as well?
Well, a lot of stuff carries over. When we were in the pre-production stages, I think a lot about the same things, and that's what is the vocal doing? Where is the vocal in the tune? What is Nate trying to put forth in this vocal? What is the intent? So even if the lyrics aren't totally set, there's an intent there. There's a delivery, and so I listen to that, and I really try to support that as best I can with the drums. I try to make the musicians feel as if whatever choices they've made, those are the correct choices. I want to make them feel comfortable, and that stuff holds true when I'm with Clutch. It's the same thing. I'm listening for Neil. What is Neil? What is the intent here? What is he singing about? And how do I support that? And I think that's one of the basic roles of a drummer, just making the music feel good and making the vocal pop.
Yeah, and that is so important. And again, that's why I love your playing so much, is that the ability to be able to adapt to these situations, whether it's more of the hardcore sound, whether it's more of the blues rock sound, the funk go-go sound, what's going on there, you're able to adapt to these situations no matter who you're playing with, no matter what band or jam or whatever the case is. You're able to adapt and make everyone else shine while being able to be yourself.
Yeah, I think it's really about listening. It's the first thing I do when I get in a room with my band or any band. You listen to what's going on. Don't just start playing a bunch of stuff, and don't try to superimpose what your idea of the music is supposed to be. Listen to the other musicians, and that gets you really far. And I think that's probably a valuable lesson that a lot of not only drummers but just musicians in general listen to one another. Listen to the cadence. Listen to the groove. Listen to how he's swinging those notes. Listen to the bass player. How is he swinging his stuff? Try to be cognizant of that. And that's not to say that you have to play exactly what it is that they're playing, but that's your starting point. That will inform how you make your drum part.
And thinking about that, did that take you a while to be able to realize that when it comes to being a drummer, making sure that you do listen, or did you know that once you were getting into bands to be able to make sure that you listen to everybody?
No, that's something that you learn. Improvisation was where I learned that skill. We very early on in the band, we started improvising on stage, which was something that we hadn't done before that. And in the early stages, it was just sort of like a freak out. Everybody just sort of play whatever it was that was in their head, and that in itself is a good exercise too. I certainly wouldn't tell drummers to not do that. But at some point, these improvisations, they become more of a group effort, and the only way that can happen is if you're listening to one another and either complimenting or contrasting whatever it is the other players are doing.
So when did that start to feel natural in Clutch to really making sure that you're listening to everybody and getting that cognitive sound?
It's something you still work on. I'm still doing that, because there's different ways to compliment, different ways to contrast, and so that I think that's a skill that you continue to nurture. And a lot of it also has to do with what's inspiring you at the moment. Records that you're listening to at the moment, drummers that you've seen, other musicians that you've seen. All this stuff goes into making the live show an honest live representation of the band.
So thinking about that, what is currently inspiring you right now? Is there any albums or drummers or anything in particular in 2018 that's inspiring you?
Well, I listen to a lot of older stuff for the most part. I still enjoy listening to Elvin Jones. There's a John Coltrane record that just came out recently called "In Both Directions," and this is an interesting recording because these are songs that had been released on other albums, but these were all songs that were recorded in one day. Just after the Coltrane Band recorded with Johnny Hartman. Johnny Hartman was a jazz singer, and that record is comprised mostly of ballads. And to know that they recorded this recording of ballads on one day and then came in the next day and played this record in both directions at once is, it's kind of a mind fuck because it sounds like a completely different band. And then in addition to that, they were actually they had a standing engagement at a club in New York, so they were actually playing every night and then coming into New Jersey to do these sessions and then going back into the city. So you can listen to the band and tell that they definitely have their sort of road chops on. And so I continue to discover new things that Elvin's playing. And then I listen to a lot of non-drumming stuff as well. There's a lot of blues stuff that I enjoy listening to. Elmore James and Mississippi John Hurt and reggae stuff. I enjoy that. King Tubby. I still love to practice to King Tubby. A lot of New Orleans music as well. There's just so much to choose from. But it's all drums. I try not to look at it like it's genres. It's all music. It's all time.
Yeah, and I think that is such an important thing because whether you incorporate it into your playing or you just get ideas for songwriting or just coming up with different drum set ideas. There's no matter the style of music, there's always something that you can learn from somebody else. Be it from decades in the past, whether it's something that's currently going on right now. That's the great thing about music is that there's always room to improve, always room to be able to come up with new inspirations and creativity and improve yourself.
Absolutely, I totally agree. And there's and now that we have this advent of YouTube, I can't tell you how many times I would get up in the morning, have my coffee, start thinking about what I'm going to practice, and just to kind of get my head in the game, I'll go on YouTube and I'll just click on a drum video. It could be any video, and more often than not, everybody has a little something to share, and so just one little bit of knowledge can spark a really fruitful practice session. And I think that's a valuable tool that we should all take advantage of as well.
Oh, very much so. So, also thinking about that as well, like, is there anything, like, recently or currently that you've been working on, either to, like, get your chops better, or, like, new ideas that you haven't tried on the drums yet?
Yeah, well, I've been, just in the last few days, I've been working out of the Will Coxon book of modern swing solos, and so this is a book of drum solos, and they're kind of they're rudimental in nature, and it takes me a while to get through them. I can read, but it takes me a minute. But I think just that exercise of looking at these solos and then translating them, trying to play them on the pad. That's been an incredible warm-up, and even more so than just getting up there and just trying to play double strokes as fast as you can. Just put your metronome on on 45 BPM and try to get through Paradiddle Johnny. That's what I was working on last night, and it's super fun. It's syncopated and it swings and it gets your hands moving, and then I notice it right away when I get up on stage. I'm like, oh wow, okay, that stuff starts to translate, starts to creep into your playing. I'm an advocate of the Ted Reed book, Syncopation, and there are a million different ways to interpret that book, and so I'll pick one page and think of 2 or 3 interpretations to play, and just sort of get that sort of triplet feeling going, that kind of Elvin-y triplet thing, and just play it dead slow, and not even really care what it sounds like either. I think that's another thing that would benefit a lot of musicians out there, not just drummers. When you're practicing, don't worry about what it sounds like. I can remember in the early days, I would have a practice kit out here, and I'd have it, in a room next to another band. And I'd think to myself, wow, this is going to sound terrible. I need to play some stuff that sounds cool. And I don't do that anymore. I don't care what it sounds like. I want it to sound terrible, because if it sounds good, then I'm not really practicing. So don't be afraid to try something brand new, dead slow, and make mistakes. It's fine. Ultimately, that's going to make you a better player. And I can tell you for sure. Playing exercise 3 of syncopation, at 72 BPM, and picking one of those interpretations, where right hand plays a line, left hand fills in, and feet play jazz. Just play that for 10-15 minutes, and it's incredible what it does for your playing. You get up there and stuff just starts to flow.
Yeah, and I can definitely tell you right now, that's inspiring me after this to go over to my pad and being able to just work on those syncopations and rudimentary stuff like that, and just like coming up with these ideas for the tempo, and just being able to just like come up with these new ideas and not being afraid to sound terrible, because it's like when you do sound terrible and then you keep working on it, you will eventually get better. And it's great to be able to get that advice out there, just to work on something that you're not as familiar with, and just work on it until it starts to feel natural to you.
Yeah, and just take little bits of it. I was looking at that solo last night, and I was like, what? I'm just going to play the first 4 lines. I don't have to worry about the rest of the stuff. Just play these first 4 lines. You only need little bits. And then eventually I'm like, well, you know what? I really only want to work on the first 2 bars. And you get a lot of mileage out of that stuff. And it's fun for me. I remember doing an interview one time with a German journalist, and he was asking, he says, I understand that you like to practice, and you spend a lot of hours practicing. He says, isn't that boring? And I said, well, only if you find practice boring. My buddy Mike Dillon says practice is a party, and so I like to subscribe to that point of view.
Yeah, and that is a great way to look at it too. Any way that you can improve yourself, whether it's just warming yourself up, whether it's learning new techniques, new styles, whatever the case is, if you can have fun while you're trying to improve yourself, that's such a great thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Just engage the instrument, engage the instrument in whatever way you feel comfortable with that day. Don't just get up there and play the same thing. Be active, be aware of the fact that you're playing drums. Try some new shit.
Oh, absolutely. So to bring things back around here, of course, again, you guys are a part of this amazing tour with Sevendust going on right now. You got this amazing holiday run that's coming up at the end of the year. Hearing about you playing on the new Line Eyes album, which has got me very excited for 2019. What else is going to be going on with you in 2019?
A lot of touring. We're going to continue supporting Book of Bad Decisions. The touring is really what this band does best, and we enjoy it. And we also don't want to get straight jobs, so we're gonna stay on the road, and we're gonna play gigs, and we're not gonna work at Home Depot, and and we'll get into some festivals, I'm sure, next summer, and then see what opportunities come our way. I'm sure along the way we'll probably start to write some new material, but for now we're just concentrating on playing these songs and having a good time out here.
Oh, that's so cool. And thinking about that as well, of course, in 2018, I mean, there's so many different opportunities for the live shows, and you guys have been a part of some amazing things. I mean, whether you're doing opening slots, main support, headlining, festival shows. I mean, what's it like for you as a band to be able to adapt to those kind of situations? I mean, whether you're doing a full hour-and-a-half headlining set or like a 45-minute support slot, what's it like for you to be able to adapt in that kind of situation?
We just sort of read the festival, read the audience, where are we at, what is it we're trying to accomplish that day. If we're playing in front of a bunch of folks who have never heard us before, we might tailor the set in such a way that, we want to make new friends. We don't want to alienate people. So that can mean a lot of different things. But the beauty of Clutch music is that it really is so versatile. I mean, we've played with everybody from the Wailers, to Gojira, I mean, it runs the gamut, and because of that, I think we're able to play for a lot of different people, and the fan base is pretty broad.
And with that, I mean, does it affect you playing at all? I mean, sorry, getting lost in my words. I mean, like when compared to like doing like a headlining slot compared to main support slots. I mean, like if you're doing like a 45-minute set and then you're done. I mean, do you feel like you have like so much more energy that you want to be able to give off, or does it feel good when you're doing like a 45-minute slot?
No, it feels good. We really sort of just tailor the energy to what's happening that day. Of course, if you've been on the road for 2 months, and you get up there and you have only a 35-minute set, that's barely enough time to get warmed up. But it's cool. It's a gig is a gig, and regardless of how many people are out there, what the venue looks like, we get up there and we play as hard as we can, regardless.
Yeah, and that's what's so important. And, again, it's so inspiring to be able to hear you guys thinking with that mentality in 2018, just like trying to put on the best possible show possible, playing the right songs for the right tours for the right time, sorry about the pun, but whatever feels right, just being able to do what is right for Clutch in 2018. And it's just so great to see that.
Well, thank you.
Oh, absolutely. And I think with that, that's a great note to end on. Thank you so very much for taking all this time to be able to talk to me about everything that's going on. Of course, the brand new album, Book of Bad Decisions, such an amazing album from start to finish. It's great to be able to hear this amazing collection of songs together. And I imagine in the live setting, not having the chance to be able to hear the songs in the live setting yet, I just imagine that they just sound so amazing live compared to the rest of the set that you guys do. All this amazing touring, being with Sevendust, be it the upcoming holiday run, everything that's coming up in 2019. It's so great to see you guys doing this, and most importantly, it was just great to be able to have this great conversation with you about music, about drums, about life in general, and it was great to be able to talk to you this whole time.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me.
Oh, not a problem. Before we wrap things up, is there anything else you'd like to mention that I hadn't brought up yet?
No, not really. I think we covered most things. I think, unfortunately, I have to run to a sound check right now.
Oh, yeah, that's why I wanted to make sure to wrap it up. Even though I could have gotten several more hours with like so many different questions and stuff, but once again,
we'll do it again one day.
Oh, absolutely! I'd love to be able to do that, and just either talk shop, talk music, whatever the case is. It was great to be able to talk to you. Of course, with you being busy on the road and everything, I really appreciate you taking all this time, and I hope you have an amazing set tonight and a great rest of the tour.
Awesome, thank you, sir.